is the theme there. There we go. So welcome everybody to this TPC webinar, A Love Language, with Caspian Turner from Accessible by Design. My name is Andrew Thomas. I'm the director of TPC. For those of you who haven't used, I know there's got to be only a few of you now who haven't used Zoom webinar before, any questions, head down into the Q&A at the bottom, put them in there. I'll dive into those at the end. But I'm going to hand over now to Caspian, who's going to introduce himself and today's topic. Caspian, over to you.
Thank you very much. And I'm going to share my screen. And hello, everyone. I'm Caspian. I'm a digital accessibility specialist. I am a man with a bald head and a beard, wearing a black hoodie. I use the pronouns he and him. I am accredited by the International Association of Accessibility Professionals as a web accessibility specialist. I'm delighted to be here talking about ticketing. And so what are we going to be covering? So we'll cover what's your love language, why language matters. We'll talk through cognitive load, some real world examples of confusing language, and we'll talk through designing for clarity, as well as some practical tips and takeaways. So why the title, Ticketing a Love Language? Love languages are different ways of expressing and receiving love. And until now, there have been 5 love languages. Those are acts of service, quality time, receiving gifts, words of affirmation, and physical touch. But the latest research shows that there are now 6 love languages. The 6th, ticketing. It goes beyond acts of service, recognizing regular patrons in the foyer by voice, by scent. It recognizes the discussions over how restricted a restricted view seat might be, how wide a handrail might be when blocking your view, how customers were unaware of the returns policies at the time of booking. Yes, ticketing is a love language. Getting thousands of people through the door of your venue each week to experience incredible live events, which leave most people with delight and wonder. So we're going to start off with a poll. Take the TPC love language test and find out yours. There's a Slido on screen with a QR code, and I'm also going to place in the chat a link directly. So there's a Slido link in the Zoom chat, or you can scan the QR code on screen. See, people are starting to vote. Okay. So let's see what people are saying. So yes, are you on a Ticketing Professionals webinar? Yes, ticketing is my love language. Or help, I thought I signed up to something else and now I feel too awkward to leave. Luckily, 100% of people are saying, yes, ticketing is my love language. Now, I'm not just wanting to ask gratuitous questions. I've got a couple of more polls for you. Oh, now we've got 8% of people saying they've turned up to the wrong place and they're too awkward to leave. But we're going to move on to, have you ever been confused when booking a ticket? Yes or no? Just give people a few moments to respond to that one.
Caspian, while people are answering that, this is fascinating because, you know, if we are involved in building ticketing systems and websites and designing the products that do it and, you know, work in ticketing, if we're confused, what chance is there for people that don't work in this industry?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, with the kind of prior knowledge and understanding and knowing ticketing inside out, we're seeing a very similar result here to as when we ran this session at the Ticketing Professionals conference earlier this year. So far, 100% of people have said yes, they have been confused when booking a ticket. And so now I'd really like for everyone to let us know what the cause of confusion was, whether that be down to too much information, whether that be confusing steps, what those steps are, whether it be choosing a seat or a time slot. What confused you when booking tickets? So we've got fees popping up, policies, pricing. Too many words, view of stage, accessibility options, choosing between too many options, sightlines, confusing steps, unclear, comms, how to proceed to the next stage. Dates, website layout, package. Just give a couple more moments for the 3 people I can see are typing. Unclear language is getting bigger on the screen. When we ran this at the Ticketing Professionals in Manchester, one of the things that appeared front and center were the words "too much bump," and I think we're getting a pretty similar answer this time. So thank you very much, everyone. I'm going to switch back to the slides now. So you should now see. Brilliant. So we're going to talk through why language matters. The words that we choose have the power to inform or alienate our audiences. And as humans, we have a limited amount of information that we can process at any one time. This is referred to as cognitive load. If we present audiences or customers with unfamiliar words, it slows them down and it might put people off buying altogether. So we're going to talk a bit more about cognitive load theory. Cognitive load describes the amount of working memory someone uses when they're taking in new information and transforming it into their long-term memory. So in simpler terms, cognitive load helps us consider how easy or difficult it is for someone to do something new. We have a finite amount of cognitive load available, and if our capacity is exceeded, it means we can't carry on doing what we're doing. We can't make decisions anymore. We can't work out what to do next. If we're at capacity, we can only solve basic problems or make simple decisions. Cognitive load is broken down into 3 different types. So we have intrinsic cognitive load, which is the complexity of new information. It's referring to the difficulty of processing the information we're trying to consume. So when booking tickets, that might be working out the dates we want to go, the prices, the discounts, the venue, how to get there, whether the cast is the cast we're expecting, the seats, how far they are from the stage, why some seats are green and some seats are blue. It might be the payment methods available, what the cancellation policy is like, or how we'll get to the venue. Then we have germane cognitive load. So germane cognitive load is the deep processing of new information. That's through making associations in our brains. So it's the mental effort that's devoted to constructing and refining groupings or structures of knowledge in our long-term memory. This is a beneficial, productive cognitive load that helps support learning. So this might be us making associations of experiences we've had booking tickets in the past, or if we're looking at a seating plan online, it might be drawing from our experience of attending a venue in person and working out which seat is which seat on the plan. It might be kind of studying seating plans and looking at the proximity from the stage, working out price and availability. It might be about selecting add-ons or accessibility options and learning and understanding at what point in the journey that might happen. So it's about developing kind of structures and schemas for how processes might take place. And then we have extraneous cognitive load. So extraneous cognitive load is the cognitive load that results from the way that new information is presented. So this is usually non-essential aspects of a new experience. And in most cases, we want to minimize the total cognitive load. And extraneous cognitive load are essentially the distractions. This is going to be things like adverts, poor design, too many options, things popping up that you're not expecting to, cookies, banners popping up, or email signups popping up as you're selecting seats, too many filters or irrelevant filters, unnecessary movement or animation, essentially things that can take your focus away from doing the thing you want to do. So added up, the intrinsic, extraneous, and germane load should not exceed the capacity of your audience's working memory. And if they do, your audience will get overwhelmed and confused. The information presented to them may become too much and they may simply just give up or try booking another way, try phoning, try coming in person even. To avoid that, the different types of cognitive load need to be balanced so we don't overwhelm our users and stop them from booking. It can be the case as well that cognitive load is too low in some cases. So um, if people are too bored, that can cause people to abandon things as well. So if we're not giving people enough or the right information, it can be understimulating. I think that's less of a concern for booking processes. So with cognitive load, we want to focus on simplifying intrinsic cognitive load. We want to maximize the germane cognitive load, that kind of relying on known patterns and behaviors, matching people's experiences they've had elsewhere, and reducing the extraneous cognitive load. So removing distractions, not presenting too many options at once, or confusing our users. So cognitive overload, as I say, with the extraneous cognitive load, we might be um, trying to do too many things at once. We might be overwhelmed with email signups or pop-ups or mistimed add-ons. The timer counting down and warning people that their tickets are going to get released. That we might be have difficulty in concentrating because there are too many things that we're trying to focus on at any one given time. So if you've got dozens of options for time slots, and then on the same screen you're also asking someone what they want to drink, if they want to reserve a parking space, and also if they want to buy a program all at the same time, that might be overwhelming for our users. And when we're overwhelmed, it can cause us to feel anxious, or it can stop us from processing information effectively. Excuse me. This can lead to stress and anxiety. And conversely, stress and anxiety can reduce that capacity we have available. So if you're making your users stressed by putting too much information in front of people or using language which is unfamiliar to them, it can actually reduce the capacity they have available to make decisions and continue to check out. And when our working memory is overloaded, it can also be difficult to remember important information like start times, the venues, whether or not we did choose a restricted view seat, etc. So before we move on, I've got some disclaimers. So this session is not intended as a name and shame. I've tried to remove any identifying branding. There shouldn't be any references to any organizations. I imagine that anyone on this call could find an example of confusing language in any booking journey that they visited. This is a process for everyone to work through to try and simplify and standardize language and make it as straightforward as possible for users. If you have an example of your website, please don't worry. As I say, we could probably find an example on almost any website we looked at. There are also going to be some regional and cultural differences between websites. So where we've spoken about setting the expectations of our users, having learned behaviors, people will have different expectations based on their past experiences. But there are also going to be examples that could confuse anyone, anywhere. And the last disclaimer here is my wife wrote the jokes for me, including this one. So real world examples of confusing language. Before the Ticketing Professionals Conference, I put a post out on LinkedIn asking, have you ever been confused when booking tickets to an event? Have you been left unsure about what will happen next? Whether you've actually made a booking, or have you been left confused whether or not payment's gone through? I had a number of different responses, and so a couple of these now. I once clicked through to book a ticket for an event, and the landing page said, "Congratulations, you're in." This was before I'd booked the ticket. I nearly closed the web page in confusion and gave up, but luckily I spotted the Book Now button at the bottom of the page. Don't tell me I'm in before I've booked. Next up, I got through a queue and it took me to the registration page. I took this to mean that the system was overloaded and had taken me to my original registration where you load up your name, address, and identification. It was only later when I got through the queue for local Sunday tickets that I realized they were calling ticket purchase registration. This time I scrolled down the screen and completed the process. So these are a couple of examples where the choice of language used, the words that we use, can make or break an experience. Someone has been left almost without tickets due to the choice of the word registration here. We're going to walk through a few examples like this. So when looking for an event, you'll have different audience groups, each with different motivations. On this call, there's likely going to be some organizations with a what's on page or an events page, shows and tickets, and other versions of similar page types that will enable audiences to find an event they're interested in. If you've got lots of different types of events or want to streamline their search, you might offer filter options. On this site, one of the filter options was select who's visiting. And within that, the first option is everyone. Everyone is visiting. But we also have access. Access is visiting. And at this point, we need to is access a catch-all for anyone with accessibility requirements or an impairment? Is access backstage access, a VIP pass? Here we're mixing taxonomies, which creates a confusing experience for users. There are some instances where the best micro copy, so the labels of input fields or drop-down menus, may include small grammatical errors, but in my opinion, I don't think that this is one of them. What might help you administratively might not help tell customers what they're booking for. So on screen at the moment is a package product. It's a package product page with 4 events, reading Family 01, Family 02, Family 03, Family 04. Excuse me, the name of the package is For Family 226. But what does For Family 226 refer to? It's not clear. So booking this online appears like it might be supporting an administrative process that, unless you've got some prior knowledge, I have no idea what I would be booking for at this point in time. When it comes through to booking tickets, now on screen at the moment, we have standing seats, red upper circle, standing seat 41. View from seat, showing view for red upper circle, standing seat 41. And here I would forgive an audience member for not being sure as to whether they were booking seats or a standing place, because in the view from seat image, we've got pictures of seats in front of a stage and the word seat 41. We're using a combination of language to book what should be standing spaces. Get daytime tickets today. Get day-timed tickets today. So this is a button for an entry for a booking for the same day, reading get day-timed tickets today. This call to action, I don't think is quite clear enough to. So what happened here is we then got time slots for the day. I guess what might be useful here is if this was a venue where they sell the majority of their tickets on the same day, but I think we're using probably too many words for the call to action in this case. If we think about when things go wrong, and we think about good usability, Good usability is about setting a user's expectations so they can make a decision and be confident that in taking a decision to click or choose an option, they know what will happen next. And if what they aren't expecting to happen next, if it doesn't happen as they're expecting it to, we can guide them through to tell them what to do next instead. So in this case, on screen at the moment, we've got a screenshot reading, choose from available items, available areas, select. Please select a group to display sections. So we've got items, areas, groups, and sections, but only one drop-down menu. So again, this is an example where we're using a whole different host of taxonomies and naming conventions for a single select option. And we're trying to guide the user what to do next, but using language which isn't available elsewhere on the screen. Another part of the ticketing journey that can quite often confuse people is having lots of different price types or ticket types, depending on the system you're using. The example on screen at the moment, I have to admit, I have cropped the screenshot here. So we've got a screenshot where we've got the ticket types labeled in front of input fields and then a 0 in each input field. On the right-hand side would appear something reading with donation, without donation. But here, if you were a screen reader user, if you were going through only the available input fields on the page, what we would hear would be standard, standard, NHS worker, over 60, over 60. We wouldn't have any way of distinguishing the difference unless we realized there was text after those input fields as well. How would you like to find your seats? So this was part of a booking journey where we're being guided through the different methods of booking. We can either select our own seat using a seating plan, or we can be guided through to have the seat chosen for us using a best available option. So we're asked quite a straightforward question here. I think this is quite good. How would you like to find your seats? Use our seat map or help me find a seat. But then after this, it reads, the help me find a seat option no longer adds tickets automatically to your basket. Please ensure you add your chosen tickets to your basket manually. Does anyone know what would happen next? So the help me find a seat option no longer adds ticket automatically to your basket. This is assuming that someone's been to the website before, which is quite likely if you've got lots of repeat customers. So they were expecting some behavior which is no longer happening. We'll pass over the grammatical error because typos happen. But now we're saying, please ensure you add your chosen tickets to your basket manually. This is slightly confusing. So this was on a screen without any further detail on how to add the chosen seats manually. And I think would quite possibly alienate new users as well as existing users who were expecting the thing to happen as before. You have one unreserved ticket, total 1 tickets. So at this point, you have one unreserved ticket. This is part of the same booking journey of having your chosen seat, your seat chosen for you before adding it to the basket. And we have one unreserved ticket. Now, when we had this session at TPC Manchester, I asked the room what they thought this meant. You have one unreserved ticket. And we had some people suggest that they thought that this meant it was a general admission event. But then also on screen, it says row A, 42 balcony. And in this case, this is an example where your seats aren't actually reserved until you get to the basket page. So it's a pre-cart summary. I actually asked ChatGPT this as well. So I said, what does it mean if you have one unreserved ticket? And ChatGPT said, typically this means you've purchased or you're holding a ticket, but it doesn't guarantee a specific seat or space. Seats or spaces are taken on a first come, first served basis, or if all seats are occupied when you arrive, you might have to stand and wait. So common scenarios could be a train or bus journey with no seat reservations, events such as concerts or theatres that don't allocate specific seats, and that you should arrive early to increase your chances of getting a seat. Now, if I was paying £204 for that seat, I would be slightly alarmed if it wasn't there when I got there. Add-ons. Please note, excuse me. So here we've got a screenshot of a heading that reads, please note. Now, headings are a way that users are guided around the page. Headings should be used to group content. And headings are one of the ways in which screen reader users can jump through web pages to bypass repeated content. The heading, please note, doesn't necessarily tell you what's about to happen. And gov.uk have published in their style guide that they deem please note as unnecessary language in most of their communications. In fact, using the word please in online copy, they deem to be unnecessary. So here, rather than saying please note, we could have a heading that tells users what is included within this message, because it then says to reserve tickets for the tickets are required. Please click here, where the link is just the word here. Seating capacity is limited. Tickets are part of general admission. Presentation times are 11 a.m. and 2 p.m. Please arrive 15 minutes early. If not, please disregard this message and continue. And the call to action here is disregard. So we have a heading that's please note and a call to action saying disregard, assuming here that for many people their action is going to be to just continue, but using the word disregard, which sounds a bit negative. So next up, buy a gift certificate. In many websites, we've got an option to buy a gift voucher or gift certificate in advance. A certificate draws up connotations of having something which is framed. In many cases, this is now referred to as a voucher, or it might be a gift card, or it might be credit. But again, this is something where I think there are regional differences. We're going to move on to talk through login and registration. So having people signed in can be of benefit. If we know who someone is, we can avoid duplicate accounts being created. We can make sure we've got their ticket history. We can also email people if we've got the right consent to remind them to book, or ask why they didn't complete their order, or if they want to come back and complete an order. In this example, it says, please sign in before choosing your seats in order to access prices available to you. To register for wheelchair spaces, please contact box office. So please sign in before choosing your seats in order to access prices available to you. This sounds slightly cryptic in that you might be able to get better prices if you are signed in, but I think the alarming thing here as well is that to register for wheelchair spaces, you can only do so by contacting the box office. We're going to move on to completing an order, and this is another response to my LinkedIn message. Someone sent me this screenshot, which is a cart page, a basket page, in which there's a fee assigned, and that fee is labeled FY24 single ticket fee tier 3, $9. And so at this point, I'm thinking, well, is there a tier 2 or a tier 1? Are there ways that I can get cheaper fees? I guess having worked in a box office, I can denote that FY is financial year 24 and single ticket is not subscription tickets, but not everyone will have that prior knowledge to know what that is. So I'm simplifying that. It could be much reduced to just say ticket fees or booking fee. error messages. We've had we were talking about guiding people through booking earlier. Um, in this error message on the screen at the moment, we've got a registration page for someone to complete their full name. And the error message reads, please type the full name in Latin characters as it appears on the passport. And then there's another bit of text reading, please enter all names in Latin characters according to your passport or ID. So does this mean visitors must anglicize their names to attend the event? Quite possibly. Terms and conditions. This is part one of a two-part terms and conditions. So in this booking experience, there were 10 checkboxes in order to complete the booking. So there are 6 checkboxes on this page, confirming all kind of liability and that you have read everything that the organization wants you to read, and that you're aware of the obligations of you arriving at certain times, that you're not going to bring food or drink. And then I've never seen this in any other booking experience that I've used. There was a signature field where someone should actually draw their signature. And so on a desktop computer, this required me to click and hold the mouse. On a touchscreen device, I was able to squiggle my name. This requires someone to have a certain level of dexterity. It's not available to people who may have motor impairments or tremors, for example. And then after that, there are 3 more checkboxes. This is quite frankly, ludicrous number of checkboxes to get someone to check out. And I think if you've got that many terms and conditions before someone's arrived, there are considerations about the overall visitor experience that need to be reviewed. So designing for clarity, tips and takeaways. What to do when you have a free afternoon, lol. Buy a ticket to your own venue, paying particular attention to the language used. Get someone else to buy a ticket to your venue or events and ask for their feedback. Check whether your ticketing journey adheres to your style guide. So thinking of your style guide should also talk about what language you use. Both it should include restrictions as well as the language that you recommend and kind of style of punctuation. But it should also pay consideration to accessibility, to link text, to button text, to warnings or alerts. If your style guide does not pay attention to accessibility, it's worth updating your style guide to address things like link text, making sure that links are actions or matching title or heading pages throughout the journey that you're using. And we need to ensure that the language used is consistent between your website and other platforms. So in many cases, a booking experience will be comprised of multiple platforms. You'll have a content management system moving over to possibly a ticketing system on a subdomain or an iframe or a separate website altogether. But to the user, all they care about is, am I booking tickets for the event that I'm booking for with the organization that I'm intending to? And to give people that confidence, we want to ensure there's consistency in language, design, and process. So another thing is to consider your target audience. In Kinneret Yifra's book, Microcopy, the Complete Guide, they ask, is everyone your target audience? The more defined the target audience, the more the voice and tone can and must take on a specific style that suits it. On the other hand, if you're meeting a broad range of audience needs, your tone of voice will necessarily be broader. So if we're trying to appeal to everyone, we must have a more general tone of voice. If we have a more specified audience, we can tailor our language accordingly. When we have well-considered language or microcopy, we can create a positive experience. We can improve usability and accessibility. We can remind people that it's humans running these organizations. It's not just a ticketing platform. We are people operating these events. we can increase sales by giving people the confidence they need to book the tickets they want. And we can enhance brand reputation. When people can anticipate what to expect, they develop trust. I mentioned within the style guide that you have at your organization that you can decide on forbidden words. So you can specify and should specify words to avoid, as well as how you do approach language and style. There's a useful example on the gov.uk website, and you can find that on Google, I'm sure. And then reducing extraneous cognitive load. So how can we do this? We can avoid visual clutter, removing redundant links, irrelevant images, meaningless typography flourishes, which slow users down. We can build on existing mental models. So rather than wanting a unique booking experience, we can try and match the experiences that people have learned to expect from their experiences elsewhere. So based on their experiences of visiting other sites, the way that we structure and present language through labels and layout, we can match their experiences on our own site. That's not to say that the quality of the art itself won't be unique and the best that can be done. But I think with websites, people have expectations of behavior being consistent. And then 3, offload tasks. So look for anything in your design that requires users to read text, remember information, or make a decision. And then look for alternatives. Excuse me. Can you show a picture? Can you redisplay previously entered information? So not requiring people to enter their email twice or their address twice. Can you set a default? How can we remove friction as much as possible throughout the journey? These are some examples from an article from the Norman Nielsen group, for which the link is in the slides. But essentially, we want to remove or reduce extraneous cognitive load to give people the thinking space and capacity to complete their booking. And doing so, we want to avoid unfamiliar language, language that may alienate users, or be kind of internal language seeping into our customer-facing experiences. And that brings us to the end. So thank you very much, everyone. We've got time for questions, and I will stop sharing my slides. Andrew has some himself.
Thank you, Caspian. There were some quite scary examples in there, actually, of going. I know it wasn't a name and shame. So to everyone else, if you've got questions for Caspian, head down to the bottom of the screen into the Q&A box. We have got Caspian here for probably up to another 20 minutes or so. So, he is a very well qualified expert on this subject. So while you're thinking about getting those questions in, and there's some coming in already, I'd love to say this, Caspian, because I'm a kind of co-hosting with you. I get to ask mine first, so it gives a chance for other people to put theirs in as well. I know you said at the start about naming and or not naming and shaming. Sorry, but I mean, I noticed a couple of commonalities of some of the journeys you showed there. Without naming and shaming, are there particular kind of types of organization or particular systems or frameworks where you tend to see more and more complexity and confusing language, and are there ones where they tend to be much easier? Is there any themes that you spot there in technologies or kind of size of organization?
That's a really good question. Yeah, I guess this is always a balance where if you give people a lot of control over their system, they can essentially do whatever they want with it. And with great power comes great responsibility, and yada yada. So I think when it comes to providing flexibility in a ticketing system, which is quite often the case for some large organizations, I would always say make sure that you're testing with people once you've entered any customizations or configurations, because um, it's so easily done that you will use language that makes sense to you as you're typing it, but it's unlikely that you've got a content specialist on your ticketing team. And while we spoke through some of the examples of internal language, meaning that you can very easily account for the financial year or the packages versus the non-package tickets. Um, Customers don't care about that. Customers might not always understand that unless it's part of a very specific audience segment. Um, so yeah, I think there are trends, and I think the way to avoid that is always to try to come back to testing with audience when you're making big changes.
Okay,
I think also, sorry, one more thing on that is that I think there are some ticketing providers on this call as well, and I think if you're giving people the flexibility to control the language they're using, give organizations recommendations over the language as well. So if you've got the data from working with multiple organizations, then you know what works. You can know what works best for most use cases. And so in many cases, the default language, the out of the box system language, isn't necessarily the kind of fine-tuned best user experience language. It's the I'm putting something in a box just to put something there to show users that, or to show administrators, text can go here. Just because text is there doesn't necessarily mean it's the right text or the best user experience.
that's superb. Questions are piling in. I'm going to go first to Shona. Hello, Shona, up in Leeds. And this is relevant for those people who've got to drop off. She says, "Great, thank you, Caspian. Will you be sharing these slides?"
Yes, absolutely can do. Yeah, for sure.
Okay, Shona and other people. Again, this webinar converts to being on demand as we end it as well, so you can always watch back if you need to. So thanks, Shona, for that. Quickly on, if you have got a question, get it in the Q&A box. This is from Matthew. Hello, Matthew. If one of the recommendations is to provide someone with a website or booking flow that resembles a process they're already used to, who in your mind is doing that really well and setting a great benchmark?
That's a really I've picked out all of the poor examples here. I think in terms of quite good booking experiences, if anyone's booked a ticket through Dice is very streamlined. That I would say is one of the easiest, personally. Um, yeah, I think that's what I'd go with.
That's interesting. I do remember this is some years ago. It's like 12, 13 years ago. The Place in London, the dance theatre there, they had ticket types and they were named as UK rail tickets are named. So you could buy an advanced, which meant you had to go on that performance and not change. You could buy an anytime return, which meant you could come back to any other performance during the year. And I think airlines as well. I think there's some ticketing systems who've tried to do that. Some more questions coming up. Anonymous, what is far and away the most confusing ticketing terminology that comes up whenever you're doing observed user testing? So what's the worst you've ever seen?
I think something that's consistently confused. No, I've just thought of definitely the most confusing example has been trying to use a e-commerce platform as a ticketing platform. And so we had again, it's a mix of taxonomies where we're referring to products or items instead of tickets, where quantities and shipping costs were referred to at the point of booking tickets. So I think some of the most confusing experiences that I've held user testing sessions with has been where we've used or where we've witnessed combinations of, as I say, taxonomies, language groupings. Um,
Hmm.
and I think the other cases around the difference between choosing your own seat or using a best available option, because best available, is it the best available ticket? Is it the best available in whose opinion? So this is the difference between selecting a seat from a map or just saying I want one ticket at uh, £60 in the circle. Um, the language for that second journey is quite often confused. Calling something best available, it doesn't give the user enough information about what's happening, or it kind of misguides the user. And I think what we're actually doing is saying choose by price or choose by area rather than choose your own seat.
Okay. I think I've just caught you there, obviously using a bit of language as well. And when we say seat map, because it's not a map, it's a plan,
No,
which is a very, it's
plan.
just very, it's a very different thing. So yeah, when we were all used to calling them seat maps. Alex, Angus, I'll come to you with questions if you have got some questions. And Emily's just coming with a question there. I've got what I want to come back to my list as well. So I use for our site WordPress, and it's got there's so much more than actually text we've covered in this session so far, but readability.
Yeah.
So, and I keep getting read, liked on all my piece of copy I write that it's an inaccessible language or it's not readable. So I've started a workflow of writing now and then putting it through Gemini and Google Docs to make it more readable. And the trouble is, I don't like it what it comes out with. It's the same. It's the same message, but just in readable language. But
Yeah.
I've had to bite the bullet and go, well, if AI is telling me this is more readable and more understandable, I'm having to put it in. Just on that is, I mean, that's a quick, cheap, and an easy option. Are there tools out there that are, I hate to say it, but free or affordable to allow people to do this with their sites?
Yes, yes, certainly. So I think when it comes to using AI, um, I think using AI as a soundboard at this point in time is one of the best ways to do so. Um, I think at this point in time, I'd be very hesitant to rely on AI without human intervention. And like you say, you're not best pleased with all of the results that it comes out with. Um, so in terms of writing best practices and accessibility, we should be keeping sentences to as short as possible, really, 15 to 25 words per sentence. In the UK, the average reading age is between 9 and 11. So the essentially the reading capability of the population is that expected of a 9-year-old. And for context, the Guardian newspaper in the UK has a reading age of 14, I think it was, and the Sun newspaper has a reading age of 8. Um, Tools that you can use to check the reading age and readability or legibility of your content are things like Grammarly, Readable, Readable WebFX, and Hemingway. And these tools will all look for things like the number of words per sentence, the number of syllables per sentence and per word. But like when running it through I would say always recheck that yourself afterwards, because if you take everything all of the tools say, you might end up with very robotic sounding sentences, all consistent in length and syllable numbers.
Okay, interesting. I've got two questions coming up from Angus and Alex, which are kind of related, but I'm going to split them up because they are different. Alex asks, if you're including a more complicated product as an opt-in, extra on the checkout page. How can you balance legal requirements with simple copywriting when describing the product to your customers? I think from knowing Alex, I recognize Alex's name, this comes from a kind of insurance and booking protection kind of where there's legal wording to put in. So how do you balance that up?
Yeah, thanks. Um, I think when it comes to giving information as information that we can give to someone to make a decision at that point in time, if you do need to read a lot of terms and conditions. So um, how can we reduce the amount of information we're presenting at any one point? So I think if it is a complex product, I would think about how we could simplify the product itself as well. Is it necessarily complex, or are there ways that we can reduce the complexity of what we're selling? Um, yeah, I think seeing why it's complicated in the first place, and as well as reducing the amount of information we need to present at any one time.
Thanks for that. I'm not sure if it was my or your Wi-Fi, but mine adjusted slightly in that response. But thank you very much for that. And that kind of that was I saw that in the jumping the trampoline example you gave, where there's obviously they want these kind of what's it called, waivers in place that you're no more than one person and you have to wear these socks and you have to do these things. But obviously I often wondered, could that not be condensed into a single tick box with 10 simplified bullet points? But Angus comes on, so similar subject, so we're on the same subject, and I'll come to Emily's question in a minute. If you have got a question, if you can get it in now, otherwise we think we are going to time out. So Angus, thanks Caspian. When there are requirements and pressures, I think pressure is the important word here, to ask for donations, gift aid, upselling of products and experiences, how can we push back to support users and manage these trade-offs?
That's a really good question. So I think with that, it's constantly paying attention to how users are behaving, what's bringing in revenue, and both the kind of earned and unearned revenue through the gift aid add-ons. I think with gift aid, there is some flexibility in that you've got up to 4 years to reclaim. So if you find that actually by not getting someone to opt in, you're at the point of making the donation, if you were to find through testing that you were getting more donations if you didn't present an extra option to sign up to gift aid, you've still got the opportunity later to claim that back. So I think it's always going to be paying attention to analytics and the behaviors of your customers, and so setting up things like Mousetrail or Hotjar, paying attention to Google Analytics and measuring what matters to your organization. Obviously, that has become, well, not obviously, but in some ways that's become harder with first and third party cookies and cookie opt-ins, and so I think but it still comes down to measuring and iteratively improving.
Okay, thank you for that. Thank you for that, Emily. I'll come to you in a second. Last one of mine, and if anyone else on who's still on who's got a question, please do get it in now because we only got a couple minutes left. First steps. So if this has opened up so many ideas for me to go back and look at the TPC website. But what's the first steps I can take? Obviously, there are people like yourselves, some professionals out there. There's some tools out there, but you said they go back and buy a ticket on my own website. What's the first thing I could really look at to really focus on to give myself or my team a project to try and start this journey?
I think one of the first things that I would look at is, are you using any unnecessary words? So have you kind of embellished the language that you're using simply through I don't know, by virtue of inputting the microcopy as you would speak in conversation? I think there are merits to conversational language, but if you can say something in fewer words online, you're going to retain someone's attention for longer. So I'd look for any examples of where you could reduce the number of words used. I think would be the first thing I would, and still obviously make sense, asking the same thing but with fewer words, because then people are using less cognitive power to process those.
So is that an example of that? Is simplifying, how many people are coming with you to the theatre to how many tickets would you like? How many tickets do you want? You know, like just really cutting it down.
Exactly. I think in some of the examples we've looked at, we've used two sentences saying the same thing almost in reverse. And I think there's such a concern that we want to make sure that someone's read something online, and that we can say when people ring up saying, oh well, I didn't read that that was in the terms and conditions. People want to be able to evidence, oh well, it's on the website. Look, you must have booked through this process, because legally speaking, you should have all of the protection in your terms and conditions anyway. And customers don't really want to be told, I told you so, look, it's here.
Okay. Okay, last question then. This is from Emily. Thanks, Emily. Hi, Caspian. You're the best. That was really great. I'll echo that. It was fantastic. Emily's question: what's the most common frustration you see in user testing? The kind of thing that makes you roll your eyes every time you see it. So, what's the one that really gets you?
Uh, I think one of the most common things is the basket timeout, and people not giving long enough for people to check out. Um, and then, second to that, I would say login. So people just, no one can remember their passwords for all the different tools they use. If you can give people other ways to log in, if people are on their phones and you've got the option to kind of send a short code by email or by text, that's really reducing the friction. Yeah, no, you the best.
Thank you so much. We're going to bring it in just on time at an hour. So thank you everyone who's attended. Thank you so much to Caspian for giving up this time and walking us through some of those highlights. So you know, I'll give you a round of applause. And we can't, you don't get that on a webinar, but thank you very much. Thank you to everyone attending. We've got two more great webinars next week about lost audiences. And looking also at venue management systems as well. So with that, we'll end this webinar, but thank you for attending and thanks again to Caspian.
Thanks, everyone.